York's classic rock, Q1043.
I welcome to our show this morning Anna Yvette Martinez and Marilyn Hollenquist. They are the founders of Radical Monarchs. And the story of Radical Monarchs is now in a documentary form. We Are the Radical Monarchs, which you can watch on PBS. It debuted Monday, and you can watch this through August 19th. And of course, the first thing that you want to know, what are the Radical Monarchs? Welcome, ladies.
Hi, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Do you want to start, Marilyn?
Sure. So the Radical Monarchs are a social justice focused group for young girls of color, and we earn badges based on topics that are important when advocating for yourself and your community.
It's a lot deeper than that. It's that is in a nutshell, the short version.
Yes.
My takeaway after watching this, and I was just so inspired watching these girls, is that this is an alternative to the Girl Scouts, because the Girl Scouts does not necessarily speak to your community and what the community needs are of girls of color. Now, one of the things that the documentary started out with, and it made me actually jolt, is that you revealed that there are so many programs, mentorship programs for African-American boys. But when it comes to girls, not so much so. And I thought, oh my God, I never thought of that, but that's absolutely true.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. For sure. So I think that there's been, a lot of movement around focusing work for young men of color. And I think that work is incredibly important as well. But I think that we can't leave behind, girl identified young people as well, because as we know, we are constantly kind of battling against sexism and being gendered and racism and all the things that intersect as being young girls of color.
Anna Yvette, this was a very personal story for you because it was your daughter who wanted to join the Girl Scouts or the Brownies, right?
Yes, absolutely. So when she was in 4th grade, a lot of her classmates were joining a local traditional scouting troop. And so naturally she wanted to join because all her classmates were. And so she came home asking me like, Mo, I want to join this group. And when I looked at the composition of the group, she would have been one of 2 girls of color. And my daughter's been raised, in a very socially justice, radical family. And so I felt like joining that kind of traditional model would not center her experience as a young girl of color, and as someone that's been raised very radicalized, and so I had the idea of like, what would it look like to start something that kind of centered her experience as a girl of color and where they could earn badges based on social justice movement work. And so I had this idea of doing the Radical Monarchs. And I shared that idea with her. I was like, I don't know about you joining that group, but what if mommy were to start this other group for you and your friends? And she instantly kind of lit up and was like, yes, mommy, that's what I want us to do. And I was like, okay, great. And at the time I was working, at a community organization, working 60 plus hours a week. I have, 2 children. And so it kept kind of falling off my plate. And my daughter never let go of that idea. She kept being like, when are we starting that group? When are we starting that group? And she started to kind of recruit and talk to her friends, and she would be like, Mom, talk to so-and-so, they want to join. And so I knew I had to make do with her, with my promise, but I knew I couldn't do it by myself. And so I approached my best friend, Marilyn, and was like, hey, I have this idea of doing this group for my daughter. What do you think about doing it together? And Marilyn instantly was like, hell yeah, that's a great idea. Let's do it.
Tell us about some of the badges, because like the Girl Scouts, your girls earn badges, but it's not the same sort of badges. It's not about making fires, for example.
Yeah, so some of the badges include a Black Lives Matter badge where we learn about the history of the movement, and then also partner with our local BLM chapter to do actions. Another badge is called the Pachamama Justice Badge. And so we learn about environmental racism. And then we also learn about our local hiking trails. And here in Oakland, it's called East Bay Parks and Recreation. And so we learn about all the beautiful places that are there in public parks and the importance of those and our relationship to Mother Earth, Pachamama. And then another badge, the last one I guess I'll toss in there, is the Radical Bodies Badge. And so we learn about consent. We learn about our particular troop learned about the practice of yoga and how that can be a great way to center your body. And so we run the gamut in terms of the types of badges that we earn. And the Radical Monarchs get to also suggest badges that often we do those badges to see what they're interested in and what they want to learn about. And so they have lots of awesome, dope ideas that we end up turning into badges.
Oh, tell me about some of the girls' ideas. What came from the girls?
So,
Sure. Go ahead. It's your turn.
Yeah, I was going to mention, so in the Radical Bodies Badge, Marilyn mentioned that they learned about consent. They also learned self-defense, and that was something that came from the Monarchs themselves. They wanted to learn how to keep their body safe, right? We know that that's a real threat when you walk, you know, in these bodies, in this world. And so that came from them themselves. Also, the badge they earned, the Radical Healing Badge, that was an idea that came from the Monarchs. They wanted to learn and talk about different ways that, you know, communities of color, indigenous communities have always used herbs and flowers as medicine. And so we were like, okay, let's make a badge around that. And so they learned from local herbalists and healers about, you know, the power of using plant medicine and flower medicine. We did a sweat lodge with a local elder. And so those are some of the things that came from the Monarchs themselves.
Right now, the Radical Monarchs are only in the Oakland area. And I know you've had such a tremendous response that there's sort of like a nationwide need for this. But it's really the two of you who organize this. I know you have some other troop leaders. How many other troops do you have now?
So we have 2 alumni troops, and then we have 4 troops that launched. And so there's a total of 6 troops. And so the new troops, we increased the number of Radical Monarchs in those troops. So there's up to 20 Radical Monarchs in each of the new troops. And so we decided to launch locally so that way we could have high touch with this launch. We're calling this our learning year. So initially we had our troop. We didn't think it'd be a thing. We thought it'd be a one-off. And so the need was just undeniable and people continue to contact us. And so we're like, okay, let's take time to beta test our curriculum and our training practices. And so we brought on troop leaders and trained those. And so from that learning, we created a training module and tweaked a lot of our curriculum so that it would be super user friendly and very spelled out and easy to follow. And so we have these 4 new troops, and then NIVET would better be able to tell you exactly how many troop leaders there are. And we also added assistance to that because a team of 3 is definitely better than a team of 2. So that's where we are with the training. And then pre-COVID, we were, going to launch in the Los Angeles area. And so we're still going to do that, but it's definitely been slowed down because of Corona. As you know, we're still sheltering in place. And because of these spikes, a lot of, our plans got rolled back. And so we're still going to do an LA launch of cohorts in that area. And then we'll pick that back up with full speed once Corona is over. Hopefully, maybe 2021, only goddess knows when this thing is going to be over. But that's our next launch. And from there, wherever they're wanted or needed, a lot of that depends on funding. As you mentioned, we started off as a team of 2, and then we were able to hire a third person, Victoria Gomez, who's awesome. She helps NIVET with programs and communications. She's a manager for that. And then we have plans of hiring someone to help me with finance and operations. So, you know, where the funding is and where there's want and need, we'll keep going.
I am speaking with the founders of Radical Monarchs, and that would be Marilyn Hollenquist and Anivet Martinez. And you can see the documentary We Are the Radical Monarchs on PBS through August 19th. Tell us about the reaction on Fox News to Radical Monarchs and your reaction to their reaction.
I mean, it was, you know, I think it was amusing to us. It's like funny to see them kind of go in on us, and also scary, you know, because they have such a large following from the far right, right? And so I think that, you know, Fox News is just so ridiculous. And so I think that there's this kind of hilarity around it. And there's also this like serious like concern and safety around it, right? And so when that aired,
but explain what they said about you, about
oh,
Radical
sure.
Monarchs.
So, I mean, they basically said that we were, you know, brainwashing children, and that we were kind of cultivating little racists. So those are some of the things they said about us. And we got a lot of their followers, you know, coming for us via social media and via our email and our website, kind of inundating us with threats and calling us, you know, terrible names. So for a while, we had to stop posting where we were in real time out of having real safety concerns for our monarchs and ourselves. So
what is your response to their attacks? What are your response?
Yeah, I mean, I think our response is that I think that young people are inundated with brainwashing messages that are coded in white supremacy and, you know, sexism and transphobia and homophobia every day. And so I think that the work that we're doing is a lot of undoing of that and untangling of that type of, you know, rhetoric. And that, you know, I think that we, you know, are not about, I think that Radical Monarchs came from a place of wanting to actually be inclusive, right? And centering young people that have always been left in the margins, right? So I think that we're doing the opposite of what they're saying that we're doing. And at the end of the day, there's so much work to do that we don't have time to entertain that type of foolery, you know? So we got big work ahead of us. Like Miss Cheryl says, a former Black Panther leader that's in the film, and we don't have time to go back and forth with the haters and the trolls.
You know, what was really interesting was at some point you took the troupe to the California state legislature, and some of the girls, well, one girl was so excited. She just said, you know, when she grows up, this is what she's going to do. I mean, that was just an awesome moment, meeting with the lawmakers and the lawmakers being so excited about the Radical Monarchs.
Yeah, that was great. That was part of the Radical Advocacy Badge. And so most of our badges take 3 months to earn. And that badge, which is the last badge, one of the last badges earned, just because of the skill set it takes to, you know, go to the state legislators, the lawmakers, and present issues that are impacting your community, as well as solutions. You know, we had talking points. They came up with issues that were important to them and those solutions, and fine-tuned them and did lots of practice, you know, so that they wouldn't be too nervous when talking to these adults who have these important positions. And so what we really wanted to hone in on is that the state capitol, these sort of bastions of lawmaking, are for the people. It's the people's house. And so it's really important that they feel comfortable and have ownership in that, because these lawmakers are supposed to be representing us, are supposed to be representing the districts that these young people live in. And although they're not of voting age, their opinion still matters, and the solutions that they come up with, the innovative solutions, still matter. And so I was just so thankful to see that they were excited about it and it had such a huge impact, and that they could see themselves. I remember when we went on a tour of the state capitol, and we're in California, so they were showing, there's this hall with all these pictures of the governors, and the Radical Monarchs instantly were like, where are the women? There are no women here. They're only white men. Like, where are the women? And so they were so quick to point that out, and they were like, oh, okay, we see where our work is needed.
Awesome. That is so awesome. Okay. We are out of time, but if you have missed part of this interview, or you would like to check in on other interviews I've done, you can download the iHeart Radio app for free. And my podcast is Sonstein Sessions. And I'll see you guys tomorrow morning on the Jim Kerr Rock and Roll Morning Show, Q104.3. Before you go, I have a story I want you to tell your girls, okay?
Okay.
I owe my career to being an activist as a teenager. I followed my heart and my conscience, and I was active in the anti-war movement way back in the day, and then the women's rights movement. And I was always on radio and TV because this was before social media, and that was how I got the message out, because that works better than mimeographing papers. You can only reach so many people. And it was a time when it was affirmative action for radio and TV. They were desperate to hire women because there were no women on radio and TV. And a program director of a local radio station in Philadelphia that I was always on the air there, he said, why don't you come over to our side and we'll train you to be a reporter? And I thought to myself, I'm going to reach more people on air than I am on the streets. And if I tell them the story straight, they'll make the right decisions. And I never looked back, but I owe my career to being an activist as a girl. So tell the girls that. I mean, that's...
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, I wasn't going to do it on the air because I didn't want to make it about me, but it's so empowering to know that you can make a difference. And when you could do that as a girl, it just opens up your whole life.
Right.
Beautiful. Thank you so much. So great to meet you. Thank you for your work.
Best of luck to you.
New York's classic rock, Q104.3.